Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming to hear about a topic that's really near and dear to my heart, which is home energy audits. I'm just so excited to see so many Beckiites here. Just quick show of hands, how many of you have had audits already at your properties? So a couple. How many are thinking about having them? Okay. And how many have never heard of an home energy audit? Anyone? Okay, well, so at least we've got a few people thinking about it. We have three terrific speakers, so I'm not going to take long introducing them. Oh, and I forgot to have you give me, oh, I do have share screen ability. Yes, I do. Okay, great. So can you all see this slide here? Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to do literally 2 slides to introduce. I just love some of these pictures because it shows some of the technology that's used in the audits, and that it really is an objective set of measures. You'll hear in more detail from our speakers about things like blower door tests and thermographic imaging and so on. The picture in the upper left is a quite well-known image. And what I love about it, it's a row of row houses in Brooklyn. And what I love about it is you don't really need to know anything to say which one of these houses is not like the others. Guess which one is net zero energy loss, because the thermographic imaging shows up heat loss as red, or less heat loss is orange, almost no heat loss is blue. So you can see instantly which of these houses, has invested and is no longer literally throwing energy and money away into the atmosphere. So residential energy use, why is it important? It's a huge contributor to our carbon footprint. According to the Department of Energy, about 40% of all our national energy use goes to buildings, more than transportation, more than industry. And the majority of that is residential buildings, not commercial. It sort of breaks down, but the bottom line is we can do better. I love the picture of going from candles to old tungsten light bulbs now to LED, or the more modern thermostats, or heat pumps, which we'll hear from Corey about. But the idea is that it is possible to significantly reduce our home energy use, and there's money available to help us. And one of the keys to accessing that money is these home energy audits. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Robin Silverman, and I'm going to stop sharing here. And Robin has had some experiences which maybe you can share with us about insulation, and you'll want to unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. So I'll just say that we would not have done this if it wasn't for Rebecca. She was so wonderful and guided us through the entire process. She is such an expert, and she knows all of the other experts, and you just feel like you're in safe hands with her. So I just want to say that I don't even feel like I'm an expert. I feel like Rebecca kind of like did this for us. So I'll just leave it at that. So we bought our house just about 4 years ago. And when we bought the house, we were planning on doing some renovations, and then COVID happened, and we had 3 kids, and you know how that goes. But last winter, I was really interested in getting a home energy audit because we have a second master suite in our house that was significantly colder than the other rooms in the house. And I just felt like we weren't getting good heat flow throughout the house. Our house is on a 1-zone system. And so the basement would be boiling, but my kids' room would be freezing. And every time I would get out of the shower, I would be so cold. And I just was like, I can't deal with this anymore. We have to do something. So Rebecca told us about a home energy audit that we could do. And to her slide earlier, these 2 people came, forgetting the name of the company or the resource that came. I'm sure Rebecca has all of that detail.
It's actually Energy Management Associates, the
Okay.
owner of which is one of our speakers today.
Great. They were fabulous, by the way. So they came and did the blower door test. They tested the whole house. They were here for a couple of hours, and then they did some like just covering of things. I don't have any technical terms whatsoever, but I kid you not, when they came, they did such an amazing job that we tipped them. We were just like, thank you so much. They were so fabulous, so thorough. And we were really, really happy with that service. And so what that led to was a listing kind of what square footage we were eligible for rebates on this thing and that thing and whatever. And you'll get a packet, and it's any rebate that you can think of is in this packet, and anything that you could even qualify for, they guide you through the process. And it's really very simple once you have the packet. I think I actually threw mine out. Otherwise, I was going to refer to it. But it's really just detailed. It's probably 15 pages or so, and it gives you all the information. And so what happened is, after we had that initial assessment, we then hired somebody to do the work. And what we were able to do was we were able to move around kind of the pieces for what we needed the work for. And we got $10,000 worth of work done on our house. And with all the rebates, we ended up paying $2,000 roughly. And so we got a very, very generous rebate package situation. And it was really credit to Corey's business, I would say, for filling out the right lines for us. No, just kidding.
Michelle's business.
What?
Michelle's business.
Michelle, I'm sorry, Michelle's
Yeah.
business. Thank you. They did an amazing job. And so what happened was, is then the contractor who was able to come in was able to refinish the ceiling of our garage, because that was below our, that was directly below our second master suite. And so there was a lot of airflow, cold air coming into the garage and then up through the bedroom. And so they were able to insulate it from the top in the attic underneath. We did a new thing of sheetrock underneath, so there's no cold air coming through. And we did a host of other projects as well. And we worked with a man named Adam Pulse, who I think, I forget the name of his company, but Rebecca can share. I think it's Amped Enterprises. And he was really fabulous because, and this is important, when you submit the rebate for the money, you have to use the exact square footage that they list for you. And if you're off on any of the amounts, it'll kick back to you and say under review. And so I had to call and then resubmit. And I was worried because, you pay outright, like you pay the $10,000 and then you get the rebate back. And I was worried. I was like, oh my gosh, are we going to be out all of this money? That's a lot of money. And to Adam's credit, I called him and he walked me through refilling out the paperwork, and I submitted it and I got it all back 6 weeks later. And so I think my takeaway from this is that if you work with people you trust and they've done this before and you have their phone number and they're accountable to you and you're accountable to them, it really is very easy to do this process as painless as possible. And even with the hiccup of me filling out the form wrong, I think I filled out like the roof numbers for the basement numbers or whatever. We were able to get our money, and now our house is warmer. And so I would totally recommend it. You would be surprised how much money is available. We never imagined we would get that much, and it was great. So if anybody has any questions, again, I don't have any technical terms. Is there a question box?
Any questions for Robin? We can also have more questions of Michelle and of Corey, but this is your chance to ask Robin because she needs to leave for her other meeting.
I have a question. When did you have your insulation installed?
I want to say it was like a year ago this time last year.
Okay, so you went through the winter season with it already?
Or maybe it was after.
Because it looks like we did the audit in November last year.
Okay, no, so then I
So-
did it, what happened? They couldn't come till January.
Okay. So, but at least you got the insulation I just wanted to know if you went through the whole, like how your comfort level was, but
Yeah.
in January and February, it's cold, so.
Yeah. It was just so interesting because I remember when we bought the house, I noticed that there wasn't a lot of insulation in the attic. And so Rebecca had said to me at the time, and I'll never forget this, she was like, yeah, you want to get insulation in the roof because you want to feel like, when you're outside in the winter, you want to put a hat on. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And so I just do whatever Rebecca tells me.
Oh my, that's a little too much responsibility. But no, I also want to know, did you notice if you compare this January, February with last one, and I know the temperatures weren't exactly, did you notice any difference in your bills, your heating bills?
You know, I should look at those. I haven't.
What was there different in your comfort level?
Yes, yes, it was noticeably different. And then what they also did when they came was they looked at the windows to see if there was cold air coming in and out of the windows. And there were windows in our house that I never even imagined would be like have a gap to have cold air come through. Like they were some of the more modern windows or some of the rooms that kind of like look the nicest, but were leaking the most amount of heat or energy. And so that was really helpful because they did those kinds of tests too.
Well, thank you so much. Any final questions for Robin?
Let me just make sure I put some notes down. Let me just make sure I said all the things I meant to say.
Put up your hand.
Oh, and the other thing is that in the audit, they give you like an estimate for how much the rebate will pay you for. So you don't have to commit to the process before knowing what your rebate will be. They will tell you at the audit, like approximately what you'll get. And then also, I texted Adam, the guy who actually did the work, saying, you know, my synagogue's doing a thing. Do you mind if I mention your name? And he said there's like a potential discount for BEKI members if you like talk about this thing. So I can also share his contact information. He's like it's like a family-owned personal business. And so his sister actually lives in Westville, so he also like has a connection to the community. And so
Okay.
Joanne has a question.
yes.
It's actually Rob. About Robin, how long did the process of making the changes take, and how disruptive was it?
So honestly, I didn't really understand what a blower door test was. And if I had, I would have not planned on going in and out of my house 7 times a day to bring in the groceries. So I actually had to go through like the back way. So aside from, you know, not being able to manage my grocery delivery, it wasn't like the audit test. The audit was not difficult at all. And then when it came to the work, we were just happy for the work to be done, and it was in like a different part of the house, so it wasn't very disruptive to us. And I also feel like when you have the audit, you'll have a sense of what the lift is on your construction or whatever it is, and so you'll be able to manage that based on your own comfort.
Dang.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And if we now know, you know, if you have to drop off at any point for the Ezra meeting, we totally get it. But if you are able to stay, you're welcome to stay. And turning now from an insulation story to a heating and cooling, electrification, decarbonization story, our second speaker is Corey Stone.
Hi, everyone. Great to see everyone. And I'm just going to tell you how we decided to convert to heat pumps from gas baseboard, and what the considerations were. And this is a 3,000 square foot house we've lived in for 20 years. It's 100 years old with some modern additions. And we've made some mistakes. The things that we've done well are you know, use the moments of replacing things that needed to be replaced to upgrade. So we actually had, like Rebecca, we had oil, we converted to a modern gas, and that was easy decision because our oil tank was leaking and our chimney needed relining, and with the gas we didn't need to fix either of those things. We replaced all of the old windows in the house, and we have regrets about that decision, because putting in ordinary inserts doesn't necessarily fix the ceiling or lack of sealants around the windows or fill the hollows in the places, and it was cosmetically beautiful, but not particularly efficient at the end of the day. And there are places where they're drafty. So that's an area where having had an audit would have been helpful. The house was always hot water. It got converted from cast iron to baseboard probably sometime in the 60s. And sometime when it went possibly from coal to oil. And it had been ducted for central air. So we had that basic infrastructure. We bought the house with the central air in it. We weren't the ones who added that feature. And we barely used it over our time. But we did have visiting children who complained that it didn't work the summer of 22. And so we decided we should think about replacing it. And the deciding factor about replacing versus not is we're planning to downsize, which is the best way to reduce your carbon footprint. We don't need 3,000 square feet. And we figured it's better to sell a house with central air than just say, we have the ductwork for central air, but you're going to have to be on your own. We couldn't fix the central air that we had because they were old enough that the refrigerant that they used to use, which was ozone depleting, is no longer available. And no matter what was wrong with those units, we couldn't. But it also meant that replacing it would mean replacing not just those big condenser units that sit outside that have the fans that were, but also the refrigerant lines that go into the house and the big evaporator coil fan units that blow the cool air through the ducts. So everything would have to be replaced. That just involves lots of labor. That makes the economics of having the ductwork, having to do all that extra work anyway, makes the economics of upgrading to heat pumps from just replacing central air quite favorable. So the quote for just replacing central air, which would have automatically bumped up efficiency for the air conditioning a lot because of the improvements in the units and in the base energy standards, was about $15,000 for 5 tons of capacity, 3 tons downstairs, 2 upstairs. We didn't need it all. We could have just gone with upstairs, but we had to replace both. And you have to, if you're selling with central air, you really have to be able to cool the whole house. So then the incremental quote for getting heat pumps, and there are lots of choices in heat pumps. We had lots of contractors bid. The contractor that John Weiser and Shoshana Zaks used was the one that we ultimately went with because they had better pricing, but also the LG heat pumps, which have the very high, very low operating temperature that they can go down to. We looked at having mini splits rather than just kind of pure split systems, but those for doing a whole house, it just made sense to just stick with the ductwork and those big blower units in the attic and the basement. The incremental cost over that 15 was about another $9,500 in the quote. The rebates reduced that by $250 a ton or $1,250, and the federal tax credit that we would get from installing heat pumps was either 30% of the cost or $2,000, whichever is less. What that means is the smaller the project, the bigger the impact the tax credit can have. We could have gotten really clever and split the project upstairs and downstairs between 2 different years, 2 different purchases, and gotten maxed out on the tax credit for another $2,000, but it would have been a pain in the butt. We didn't want to wait that long. So had we had more insulation, had we had an energy audit, had we had better windows, the sizing of all this equipment could have been reduced, less hardware, probably not less labor. So you're saving on ultimately the efficiency of the equipment. It's easier to run smaller pieces than large, closer to the capacity. And we So far have not yet gone through a full winter with our heat pumps, but I'm very comfortable right now. And we still have the gas baseboard available, but we're not using it. If it gets really, really cold and we are uncomfortable, we can always switch that on. But
And by the way, I just want to say, I think that's super smart. And I have known of people who went 100%. In fact, I think there is a family at BEKI. Not one of my clients, given the story, I'm sort of happy to say, who were persuaded to sort of throw out all of their old heating equipment and go straight to a heat pump system. And it did not work out for them. These new systems, for the very coldest days, it really is good to have your old system in place as a backup in most cases.
Yep. That's the story.
Great. I see Donna has a question for you.
Yeah, well, going back to basics, what are heat pumps?
Maybe Michelle can do a better job than I can, but I'll give it a shot. Think of it as an air conditioner run backwards. It's hard to imagine, but even when it's cold outside, there's energy swirling around in the air, and the heat pump acts just like your refrigerator, which is always removing heat from a place that's already cold and pushing it back into the room. If you had a refrigerator plugged into a wall in a perfectly insulated room, the inside of the refrigerator would stay cold, but the room would just get warmer and warmer and warmer because you're actually net inputting energy, because you're pulling it out of the inside of the box, putting it in, and you're using energy to do that. So the net input of energy is what's going on. The technical part has to do with the movement of refrigerant. And refrigerant is something that's always switching between liquid and gas state. And when it's in the liquid state, you compress it, it pushes heat out of it. And when you let it evaporate, which is what happens when it's cooling, let's say, in the coil in your attic, it's sucking up heat when it evaporates, like having a cool, spray on your arm and letting it evaporate on a hot day. It feels cool. How's that?
That is pretty excellent. And Michelle, do you have anything to add?
No, that was perfect.
That's great. I see Nicole has a question.
Yes, hi. We're actually going through the same exact process right now. And we're trying to we're doing the same thing. We have exactly the same thing we have oil right now, and we're trying to put in a heat pump and getting rid of the oil, and we have ductwork for the air conditioning already. So my question was, I don't know, did you get rid of the oil and put in like a gas burner? Was that something that you did at the same time, or that was already something that happened before?
We had done the conversion to gas 20 years ago when we just after we moved into the house. So it's a hot water system. It's not a forced air heating system. So the old heat runs through baseboards, and it's water or glycol that's being heated up and makes those radiators hot. The cooling system and now our heating system both run through the same set of ductwork. So do you have forced air heat, or does it go through radiators?
Well, we have sort of every system you can imagine. We have forced air with it that can also heat partially, and does air conditioning, and we have radiators and baseboards also. But nothing really works very well. So it's all, and the air conditioning unit upstairs just broke, and it's the same problem with the cooling liquid that's not available anymore. So we just decided that we need to just change everything. But I'm thinking I would like to get rid of the oil completely. But as you said, that the heat pump system sometimes needs some backup for very cold days. So I'm thinking if it's good to just get sort of a backup gas.
Well, you don't have to do anything to your oil system for now, and wait till you have the heat pumps and see what it's like on those really cold days with the heat pumps.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no urgency.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, I've known a few clients who have kept oil systems as backups and maybe almost never use them, but on very, very occasional super cold days, the oil kicks in a small amount. And if it's that occasional and that rare, the fact that it's oil, meh, it doesn't matter so much. As opposed to the without naming names, the sort of horror story I heard is a couple who were persuaded to completely throw out their previous fossil fuel based system, and then they found that when the days were getting too cold for the ratings of their new heat pump system, the heat pumps were working continuously, trying, and they ended up with $1,500 a month, $2,000 a month electricity bills. So yeah, it was a bit of a disaster. So I think it's really much better to keep the fossil fuel system just as a backup, even if it only kicks in 3 times in the winter.
Okay, it's a good point. Thank you.
And I assume you're working with a good auditor who can help guide you through all this?
Well, we did the energy audit just recently, and now we're working with iHeart New Haven.
Oh, okay, yeah, yep.
So we're doing that process right now. I'm trying to get quotes and then meet with somebody to discuss like what the best thing would be to do for our house. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, they're good folks. Just it's just good to always ask questions over and over. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good folks with a lot of good information. I see, yeah, and Robin's headed out. So thank you. Do you feel like you got an answer to your question?
Yeah, thank you. That's great.
Okay, great. So maybe put your hand down so you can raise it again next time. Any other questions for Corey? Okay. Well, thank you. And Corey, I really would love to hear, once you have all the data at the end of this winter, how it compares with last winter in terms of your total heating cost for the winter.
We'll be very curious ourselves.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Okay. Well, thank you to our 2 BEKI speakers. And I'm just about to bring up, we talked with them about a couple of particular experiences, and Michelle Long of EMA will introduce some of her work and talk a bit more about the energy audit process overall. I just want to put a little bit of competitive energy into our BEKI audience here by saying it's not just that we could do better as individuals, as a community. We can do a lot better as a state, because Massachusetts is way ahead of us, and that should not be the case. You know, for instance, looking at solar, which is, you know, one aspect, Massachusetts went from 2005, 197 houses in the state of Massachusetts had solar on the roof, to 2018, which is the most recent number I had, 85,000 houses did. And that was 2,200 megawatts of production. That's 4 large power plants full of production. And it meant that the state of Massachusetts was able to, first of all, decommission an aging nuclear power plant that they shared with Vermont, and avoid building 3 other power plants that they had thought they were going to have to build. So when you get to this scale, it actually makes a difference on statewide energy planning. And Massachusetts got there with lots and lots of incentives. Compared with Connecticut, by year end 2022, we had just gotten to 400 megawatts. Again, 2018, Massachusetts was already at 2,200 megawatts. So, you know, a lot of that is not even residential solar. That's including non-residential, that's including utility scale installations in Connecticut. So we're really way behind our cousins in Massachusetts, which as a proud nutmaker makes me sad. And also on these energy audits, you know, at the most recent data I have is that 11,415 homes in Connecticut have received home energy audits. Yay, that's great. 193,107 homes in Massachusetts have had these audits. So we're kind of not there yet. I'm hoping that we get there sooner than later. And I'm hoping that Michelle can give us some good information on what it all means and how we can get there.
I hope so. I did prepare a presentation, just kind of like an overview. If you want me to, can I share my screen? Oh.
Give
Oh,
it
now
a
I
try.
Okay, hang on. Now I lost everybody. So let me see. Can I share? Oh, I have too many things open. Yeah, let's share this one. So this is it's just a quick kind of slideshow presentation that I put together, that kind of goes over the process. And so I kind of just went from the beginning on how to schedule your energy audit. And you can do that either by calling Wise Use, or you can call a contractor directly. So you call somebody like me, and there's, I believe there's 30 contractors. Sometimes it changes. But there's the last count, there was 30 contractors that perform their home energy solutions, energy audits for UI and Eversource in Connecticut. And you can call them directly. And then what happens, or you can call Wise Use. If you call Wise Use, what happens is that you go into you kind of go into a round robin. So whatever contractor's next on the list to receive the lead, that's who you go to. So, and we all are delivering the same services, but you know, we're all different companies. So, you know, I'm not going to say I'm better, but anyway, if you contact
I'm going
us,
to say she's better than most.
but if you contact us, what you can expect, and we're easy. You can call us, text us, email us. And, you know, the only thing to manage expectations is we do book out. So right now we're booking about 8 to 10 weeks out for just the audit, but we do have a cancellation list so we can get you in a little bit earlier if your schedules are flexible. But when you talk to us on the phone to schedule your appointment, what we do is we create the project in the utility system, and then we send you a confirmation, and then we send you more confirmations, you know, as it gets closer to your appointment time. Right now, the copay for the audit is $50, but in January 1st, it turns to $75. So that's something they call it a copay. It's something in the legislature that for the customers to have kind of some skin in the game. So it's been all over the place, but lately it's hovered around the $50 mark the past couple of years, and then they're upping it to $75. Is there any questions about that? Or should I just keep going? Okay. So you heard Robin talk about the audit. I mean, what to expect. It's a crew of 2. You know, usually we start our appointments at 9 a.m. or in the afternoon between 1 and 1:30. And right now, all my crews are men, but I didn't want to say that because I've done audits. So you can always, and there are women out there that do them. But anyway, the crew of 2, they arrive and then they do a walkthrough with you. And what they're looking for on the walkthrough is any kind of health and safety issue that you don't know about that might prevent us from doing the audit. So that's the first thing they do. And then as they're looking through your home, though, we put the home into winter conditions, which is closing and locking all of the windows and then leaving the interior doors open so that when we run the blower door, it just gives us a full test. And then after we do all of that, then the crew actually performs safety testing on your mechanicals. So, I mean, if you have a heat pumps and you're all electric, there isn't any safety testing, but this is for like gas and oil and any combustion, propane, any combustion that you've got going on. So we make sure that there's no ambient CO, make sure that the CO in the flue isn't high, make sure it's drafting properly, all of that stuff to make sure that you're safe in the home. And then if everything is good, then we move on to the blower door. So I just took some screenshots of what the blower door looks like. In case, you know, you've never had this done before. We talk about the blower door and people are like, what is it? And it's hard to describe, but as Robin was saying before, we do usually put it on the front entry door just because that's usually the most accessible. So the guys will set this up on the door, and then they go from there. And then what it does. So the blower door, actually, how do I always describe it? I wrote down all this nice stuff, but it basically creates negative pressure in the house. So it, with all the windows shut and anything to the non-conducive, so the attic hatch is shut, the basement door is shut if those areas aren't heated. And then you turn the fan on and it depressurizes the house. And so then you find all the leaks of where the air is coming in from where you don't want it to. So, and then what happens is that the crew investigates while it's running. As part of the Home Energy Solutions program, they don't have infrared imaging as part of it, but my guys have the cameras. And so sometimes if there's a good temperature differential, we'll be able to do the infrared camera while the blower door is running. And you can actually kind of see, especially around window trim and door trim, you can see where that air is flowing from. It kind of looks like streaks when you have that. But yeah, so normally, you know, the guys will do it kind of at the customer's request, but they have the cameras and they have the ability to do it. But then after, so once they do that, they turn the fan off, and then they concentrate on sealing areas in the attic and the basement. And then they move into the interior of the home by doing weather stripping, caulking, trim, outlet gasket covers, anything that needs to be done that they can see by the blower door that's going to help. I mean, sometimes you don't need weather stripping around the door, especially if it's a new door, but if you have an older door, it might need that. So they kind of determine that. And every house is different, so we never know. Let's see. So I've just put a couple of pictures in here about, you know, this is air sealing pictures in the attic. The picture on the left side of the screen is like top plates. So you foam around the top plates in the attic because that's where your sheetrock comes up and it meets the stud. And so they'll do that. And then the picture on the right is plumbing penetration that's going down. So in the attic, that's the kind of sealing that they do. That's what you'd expect. The picture on the left, for some reason, that I pulled off of one of our audits, didn't have any insulation, but what the guys would do if there was insulation there, they peel it back and then they seal and then they put it back. And then in the basement, this was another, some examples of air sealing. So around the rim joist, they put some foam, and then any penetrations that are going up into the ceiling, they will also seal around. So let me see, what else do I have? Oop. And I don't know how to go back. But anyway, if we talked about ductwork. So if you have ductwork in the home, what they do is they'll do an airflow test on your air handler to make sure that it has good flow. Once they do that airflow test, then what they'll do is they'll run what is a duct blaster test, and they pressurize the ducts, and it'll give them an air leakage number. So then they can do manual duct sealing is what they're calling it. And around the joints where the sheet metal is connected on the ductwork, they put mastic, and mastic is it goes on as kind of like a paste and then it dries. And it's kind of elastic so that it kind of can expand as it heats and cools so that it seals that off. There is, if your system is very leaky and it's things that we can't get to or can't see, there is advanced duct sealing. It's an AeroSeal product. And I don't have any notes on this on a slide, but it would be kind of like when you get the insulation done, it'd be done as an add-on measure. There is a rebate for it, and it's $1,000 per system. No, I'm sorry. I always say that it's only $1,000 right now. But that you can have someone come in and do that AeroSeal product, and they seal the ductwork from the inside. And so that we recommend when you've got a lot of ductwork that is going up the walls, places that we can't get to seal on the exterior of it, is basically.
And just to add
Yeah.
there, just so for instance, the AeroSeal is particularly valuable when you've got old air ducts that have asbestos on the outside, which is a problem in a lot of these Westville homes, because you can remove all the visible asbestos in your basement or in your attic, but trying to remove it from inside every wall in the house isn't so easy. But if you AeroSeal the ducts from the inside, that equally protects from the asbestos, even as you do it. So for instance, I had a customer right in Westville who had asbestos on the pipes, was very worried on the ducts, was very worried about it. They ended up AeroSealing their entire house, and this is a 5-bedroom, 2,600-ish square foot house. The whole house was like 2,500, and 1,000 of it was a rebate, so it cost them, 1,500.
Yep. And I've heard, so I don't have ductwork in my home, so I haven't done it, but I have heard so many stories about people who have had the AeroSeal done, and they just absolutely love it. We have customers who come back to us after we do manual duct sealing, because sometimes we go in the attic and we find ducts that are disconnected, and the guys on the job, they'll reconnect them, because they're in the attic, but but we do get great feedback from the duct sealing. It makes a huge difference. So then after the audit's done and we've already been in your attic and your basement and everywhere in your house, and we've looked at all your insulation, then the guys will give you some recommendations on how to proceed. And the insulation options that the rebate covers is all of the, fiberglass, blown fiberglass, cellulose, rock wool, spray foam. Some are less expensive than other options, and it all depends on what you're looking to do in your home and what's the best thing to do. And that's what the guys will tell you, or, if they don't know, they'll come back and say, hey, what do you think, Michelle? And then we'll look at the project and say, this is where I would go, or we would get one of our installation contractors that we work with in to take a look. So this is kind of what we're looking at as far as on the picture on the right is blown cellulose in an attic. And then the picture on the right is blown in fiberglass is the white stuff. And then the bats is the pink stuff. And then this is spray foam. So on the picture on the left is if they've suggested that you do spray foam in your rim joist and your sill plate. So depending on the home, this is one of the things that, if you're going to spend a little extra money to do, depending on your house, I would totally do this. This is just one of those things where it just makes sense. It just makes sense to do. It seals around the exterior. I think the biggest area that I would recommend this is if you have mechanicals, if you still have combustion mechanicals in your basement that are throwing off indirect heat, I would definitely create my thermal boundary at the rim joist sill plate area and not insulate the basement ceiling, because of the fact that you've got all of that heat, that indirect heat coming off of, say, an old oil boiler, especially, that you're not you want to benefit from that in your first floor. The picture on the right is just spray foam going in on the roof deck. This application, I think, is the most controversial. HVAC contractors all day, every day will tell you to spray foam your roof deck if you have mechanicals in your attic. And then you've got, on the other side of the flip side of that, the utilities do not give any incentive for that. So the rebate does not apply for spray foaming on the roof deck. But sometimes it makes sense, especially if you do have the mechanicals in your attic. And you have an older home with a walk-up you know, a walk-up attic and you have windows in there. So you don't really have true ventilation in your attic at that point. So I would usually recommend creating the thermal boundary at the roof deck at that point. But it's building science and everybody has their own opinion, if you will. So people don't always agree with me, and that's okay. They don't have to, but so the rebates right now through the Home Energy Solutions program for insulation, it's $1.70 per square foot. So I always do some easy math when I'm talking to customers, because like, well, how does that translate? Well, if you've got 1,000 square feet, it's $1,700. So depending on if you're going, what insulation you're going with, you know, if you go with cellulose and you're getting charged $2.25 a square foot, you know, you're getting that $1.70. You know, you're paying whatever the difference is. And I can't do easy math because I decided not to. Let's see, whatever that is, 50.
Well, just for instance, the same clients who had the AeroSeal had a whole bunch of insulation, and they did go with the dense pack cellulose. And yeah, so the rebate covered most of it. So I think their total cost for insulation was about $8,000, and the subsidy covered about $6,500 of it.
Yeah, that's it. You know, you've got, because the insulation contractors are all private market, they have their own prices, but usually that's typical of, you know, it doesn't, cellulose doesn't cost as much as spray foam does. Spray foam is always going to be more expensive just because the material is more expensive. You can get for your appliances, if your refrigerator, your freezer, or clothes washer are over 10 years old, they'll sign off on the rebate, and the rebate for the refrigerator is $50. Freezers except compact is $25. Clothes washer is $50. Currently, there's a dehumidifier in there, but they're taking that away for 2024. So they found that not too many people are redeeming that rebate for the dehumidifiers. I'm not even sure how many people are really overall doing the appliance rebates, but you know, this is, you know, they do all the studies and everything at the utilities. There are, and these were just the kind of 3 that I thought of. So there's no more rebate if you go from a single pane to a double pane window. That rebate they did away with in January of 2023. So now they're only giving incentives if you go to a triple pane window, and that's $100 per window that you can get, and that's a mail-in rebate. The advanced duct sealing we're talking about with the AeroSeal, that's $1,000. And then that heat pump optimization rebate, and I don't know if they're changing it or not, but that's in the booklet. So Robin mentioned the book, and I only have an wait. So the book that we leave you has a bunch of tips and everything, and has the rebates in it. And like I said, during the audit, we go through everything with you. And then if there's any questions, you know, the guys will ask, or you call me and ask me. And I definitely I'll talk a lot, but you know, you can always call and ask. And then if you want to contact us, this is here, our contact info. So I don't know if there's any questions over what I just said, or if it was too broad or not enough. But that's about it.
I see Carol has a question. I don't know if you want to stop sharing so we can see.
Yeah, let me
your
stop
face a little
sharing.
better. Yeah,
Okay,
great.
how's that?
Okay, and Carol?
Hi, yeah, I have several questions.
Okay.
The
Hopefully I
first
can
one
answer
is the smallest, but it's on my mind. So you mentioned a rebate for a washing machine. What about a dryer?
Yes. No dryer rebates.
No dryer.
And there's never been clothes dryer rebates, but I believe so the clothes washer rebate is because it gives you hot water savings. The dryer rebate would probably just be electric, and probably they don't have enough data to justify the spend.
Okay. So we had a home energy audit done, but it was 15 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
It was not as thorough as what you're describing. And they
Okay.
really didn't have a lot to tell us because the previous owners had insulated the attic, they had done a bunch of stuff. But it sounds like it would be worth doing again, because there's better testing and stuff like that, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Right now, so anybody who's had an audit done before within the past 6 years, they've changed the past participation. You can do an audit again, but you have to wait 6 years. I believe they're going to up that to 10 years, but in your case, you had it so long ago that, yeah.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So when you talk about sealing everything, that's really good, and it makes me think about radon.
Okay.
And that's out of your purview, right?
We don't test. No, we don't test for radon. Typically, a lot of people don't unless they're selling a house.
Yeah.
And so I mean, Rebecca can probably attest to this, but a lot of times, I mean, I never tested my house for radon, but if there's anybody who's, having a real estate transaction where they're selling and or buying, they're always going to do that radon test.
Of course.
It's probably good to do one. And I know you can get the at-home tests.
Yeah.
You never know.
I would add to that, it's not just radon. There's all kinds of indoor air quality things that you want to think about. But one of Michelle's slides mentioned minimum ventilation. And the thing is, the air quality depends on having enough ventilation, and ventilation is measured in what's called air exchanges per hour. So how many times per hour does all of the air in your house turn over? And for good air quality, and there's different standards and so forth, but basically you want no less than, what is it, 0.5? So everything turns over in 2 hours.
Our minimum, what we go by with the BPI standards is 3.5 air changes per hour.
Oh, 3.5.
However,
okay.
3.5, but that's what's currently with BPI standards. But when we do a blower door on like a new construction, because some of the towns are requiring that in order to get COs, the actual standard is 3 air changes per hour or less.
Yeah.
And they don't do, I mean, I get a little concerned when you're well below your minimum ventilation guideline, because then that might present problems in other areas where you might have moisture issues and so forth, where that you might want to have and bring in mechanical ventilation.
Right. So that's what I was going to say is, I mean, with a lot of these old Victorian houses, the first time I had one of my 1880 Victorian tested. So remember, there's debate about when you get below 3.5 per hour. The first time I had it tested, it was over 150. So, there's a lot of room there to reduce the draftiness and still have good ventilation. And the new construction where they're trying to get to net zero really, really tight, that's when Michelle is talking about mechanical ventilation, where you can actually get a house that's tight enough that natural draftiness will not, give you the ventilation you need. So then you actually do need a mechanical heat exchanger. And what that does, it brings in and out fresh air, but it puts it through a heat exchanger so you're not losing your indoor conditioned air on the way in or out. So you can always maintain, good enough indoor air quality and test for all of those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I have to tell you, a home's built before, I want to say 1990. This is just out of experience. I mean, we could probably seal them. We could seal all day and not even get anywhere close probably to their minimum ventilation guideline. There's just in the construction overall. So it's not something that we get too concerned with. I mean, if you're dealing with you just don't get there. It all depends on the age of the home.
Okay. That's good to know. So then my last question is, sometime probably in the next 3 to 5 years, we're gonna need to replace our water heater. That's just based on, I mean, it's still under warranty for almost a year, but they don't usually last too much past the warranty, in my experience. And it's gas, and I definitely want to go electric. And I don't, you know, I don't know what kind, and I don't really know how to research that. And I don't need to research it yet, but I might need to get some wiring done ahead of time. And like, I don't want to wait till the thing dies and then it's an emergency and I have to just, right. So do you have any advice, or would your auditors be able to give me any advice on that?
So, my advice would be, if you're gonna look at like a heat pump water heater.
I don't know, heat pump, tankless. I don't know. So the heat pump water heaters need a lot of space around them, so that they need a certain amount of volume of air. So what I would do is I probably would refer you to a plumber or a HVAC professional that would be able to take a look at the space and say, you know, what would be ideal. Okay.
Just because we're not specialized in those areas, like we can tell you, hey, water heater is not going to last more than 10 years. You should start thinking about replacing it.
Right.
So this is the discussion that we have with Deep, where they don't understand why customers aren't adopting more of the heat pump water heaters. But the problem is that when your hot water water heater goes, you're not calling in somebody and waiting 2-3 weeks for a heat pump water heater.
Exactly.
You're gonna just go out and you're gonna do exactly what I did and replace it with your gas hot water heater because mine was leaking and I need hot water.
Exactly.
So
you got hot water filling up the basement and nothing coming out of the tap, and you got to fix it.
So being proactive, I probably would, have you talk to an HVAC professional and have them take a look and say, what would be perfect and ideal for this space. And then they can give you what electrical needs to be run and what you need to have in that area.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? I know Marjorie has a question, but while we're on hot water, heat pumps for heating water, I think there's another untouted advantage of those things, which is that they dehumidify, because you are essentially running an air conditioner, or you're running a refrigerator in reverse to heat the water, which means you're pulling heat out of the air in your basement. And when you do that, you're running it through a coil of refrigerant, where the water condenses, and you have to keep pumping out the condensate, which is dehumidifying, which is a great way to save energy. If you're already running a dehumidifier, you get a double benefit. So
yeah, I
That's
would
a
agree.
great
And
point.
just as if you want to hear how 2 BEKI members are doing with a heat pump water heater and see if they like it or not, Hanan and Eden, they've put in one, and also the new members, Binny and Rachel, have just put one in. So you can quiz them on how they like it.
There you go.
Margie had a question.
Yes, hi, thank you. This has been really helpful. I have been thinking about solar panels for the longest time, and I can tell you my fear is all the people who come knocking on your door and the lease, the buy, the rebates back. It is one of the most daunting thoughts I've ever had. And I live, on the top of the hill, so I have no trees above me. My entire roof is exposed to the sunlight. So my house would be absolutely perfect for it. How do you make that decision? And I remember Daryl doing her spreadsheets. If any of you know Daryl's famous spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So I used to go by her spreadsheets, and then I'd get the right people to do my work.
Yeah, solar is a bit tricky, just because you've got so many different companies running around doing it now, and then they all have their individual contracts and then all of their different prices and their leasing prices. we work with a couple of different solar companies. Well, we don't work with them. They send us audits because you have to have a home energy audit in order to get your application for solar into the utilities, because utilities are the ones that are managing the solar programs now. I have heard great things about Tesla. But then I also hear other stories about other companies, but the one company that seems to always be kind of consistent is Trinity. And Trinity they've been doing it for a long time. So they have a process in place where they kind of make it easy, and they can do an assessment with this program with the roof and let you know how much what you need to do. Personally, I don't have solar, but I have, because I'd have to take down trees.
Right.
And I didn't want to take down trees to put solar on my house.
Right.
No,
The
there-
Yeah, no,
personal
my
kind
girlfriend has it.
a
It
little
costs her-
personal.
Last month, she paid $12 for her electric bill, which is
That's
crazy in Woodbridge with a 4,000 square foot house. So
And but then is there a lease price on it? Like,
No,
that's the
I
thing.
I don't know what
Yeah.
she does, but I will now start to look at it.
So Nicole mentioned working with iHeart New Haven, which is a free service to New Haven residents. And I've heard mixed things about some of them in terms of some of the other, heat pumps and this and that, but they actually started helping New Haven residents work through solar. And that's
Okay.
really still the heart of their knowledge base. And I would absolutely turn to them for advice guiding you through a solar decision making. They're really good for that. The one thing that I can say as a realtor on the lease versus buy decision, the one thing that they don't always remember to tell you about when you're calculating your spreadsheet, if you buy, then when the time comes to sell your home, may it be many years from now, the solar becomes an asset of the home. When an appraiser appraises the home, the value of the solar is included in the appraisal. So you can actually sell for a higher price. People can borrow for a higher price. If it's a leased system, it's considered personal property, and it cannot, by law, by appraisal standards, be included in the valuation of the home. So that is one thing that if you're in a position to buy, that is one thing that does kind of put a little weight on the scale for buying.
One more thing. The technology has obviously improved dramatically, because I can remember a lot of problems where the squirrels get underneath the old style and they eat through all the wires
Yeah.
So they're now flat and they're very little panels, right?
Yep.
A whole different style.
Yeah,
They
they've
also
improved.
have, for instance, one of the big problems was you had all these nests of wires that would go from each panel to one big inverter for the whole house. And those wires were so attractive to squirrels for no apparent reason. They just loved to chew through them. So now the new technology actually has a mini inverter on each panel, which
Oh,
gets
cool.
rid of a lot of those nests of wires and avoids a lot of problems.
Okay.
Yes,
Thanks.
squirrel guard around the panel. Yep. Thank you. I see Donna has a hand up.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say, because Margie mentioned Daryl, and you could probably speak to this much better, Rebecca, but I remember when she sold her house, you had to find somebody willing to take over the lease, because she did have a lease. And if they weren't willing to take over the lease, she was stuck for it, or had to, there was a problem.
That is another issue with the leases as opposed to buying. And the thing is, there are so many ways to finance now. Connecticut Green Bank offers these amazing, very, quite low interest loans for putting on solar. So you may find, when you talk with iHeart New Haven and you go through the spreadsheets, you may find that you can actually buy the system for, your monthly cost on a finance may be not much more than leasing it, and you own it instead.
Good point.
Okay, other questions? We're actually, we were aiming to be finished by 8:30, and I see we've gone a little past that, but I'm, Diane wants to
Yes.
She has information on solar panels.
Yes.
Diane, go ahead.
Yeah, I have had solar panels for about 8.
I think you're cutting in and out. I
years.
don't know.
A big investment. It's at least $30,000. And the company I had it done by Sunrun, and at this point, Costco has Sunrun connected to them. They didn't have that connection when I got my solar panels, but it makes a tremendous difference in your electric bill. It really does. That $12.84 is what you pay to UI, and if you're leasing, you pay whatever your agreement is with
Yeah.
not had and I have a big house. I have a 4-bedroom house. I have not paid more than $125 per month in the summer when I run air conditioning. In the winter, it's $100 or less. Very worthwhile. You have to have a roof that's one thing. They will not put the solar panels on if your roof is more than 10 years old. So that's another consideration.
And
they'll tell you have to get your roof replaced, and then they'll put the solar panels. But once the solar panels go on, if you have a problem with your roof.
Yeah. You're cutting in and out, Diane.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm cutting in and out. I guess it's my connection. Well, you were cutting in and out to me too, so I don't know if it's your end or my end.
Oh dear. Okay, but
I don't know.
No,
did you hear the gist of what I said?
I think so. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Diane, I'll talk to you tomorrow when we're together. Okay.
Okay.
'Cause that's really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. No, and yeah, good stuff. And I see in the chat that Roger wants to know if you can get an energy audit for a 3-family house. And I definitely have had them. And Michelle, do you want to talk about how the multifamily audits work? And by the way, we're over time, so if anybody needs to leave, don't be embarrassed, but I'm happy to stay for any further questions. So go ahead.
We absolutely do an audit on a multifamily. The thing though that I would point you to is that if you've got tenants in there and they might be part of the income eligible program, that's something to note, because that's a little bit of a difference with the add-on measures with insulation. So if you've got tenants that are income eligible, I would go that route. So right now, my company does not have the income eligible contract. They are supposed to be going out for bids. So hopefully next year we'll be able to have that, but you'd want to look and focus on that. If they're not income eligible, yeah, we can absolutely come in. We make 3 separate projects. We come in and we do the whole house in one day. So
yeah,
same
and
thing.
the income eligible, which I don't know, Roger and Sarah, if any of your current tenants would meet those guidelines, but I have had an audit done in one of my properties. One of the set of tenants were income eligible, and all of a sudden, it didn't matter how much money I had, because I had tenants in that unit who were income eligible. Basically, 90% of everything that was done was covered. So yeah, that was really nice.
So I believe it's 50%. So like if you have a 2-family, we'll go with 2-family, and one of the tenants is income eligible, then everybody qualifies. So both units would qualify for that. The 3-family, I think 2 out of the 3, I'm not even quite sure. I think it's 2 out of the 3 that have to qualify for that. So, so Howard wants my contact info in the chat.
Yeah, well, that's a good idea. Why
Okay.
don't you put that in again? Oh, and recommendations. I see. Sorry, Nicole was specifically looking for recommendations for HVAC companies. So I don't know if you have anybody that you want to stick in the chat. I know that's always tricky.
Yeah, I've tried to contact several of them, and I feel like it's hard, especially ones that are working with these rebate programs and that know about that and can help you figure that out. I felt like it's hard to find companies.
And if they call you back and if they can get out to you. I find it's really hard to grab, I find it's hard to get contractors of any sort at this point because they're all so busy. So it's almost like, you know, if I'm doing any work, sometimes I'm like, you know, I'm like, wait a second, like I work with you guys and it's done like 2 weeks to get an estimate. But there's several that are reputable. Trying to think. I'd have to come back to you with that. Let me get a kind of a list together to come back to you for HVAC companies, and it kind of depends on what you want done. But yeah, because I would recommend a few. But yeah, it is difficult to get people with it's difficult to get people who understand what's going on with the rebates as well. And then the other thing too is the rebates are always changing, and so. And then the budget this year, it's probably too much information, but the budget this year is also, I believe that they've discontinued some of the rebates until next year for HVAC, just because the budgets are a little bit tight this year. We're a little overspent. Everybody's taking part of all of these wonderful programs, so we're a little overspent this year. So.
Corey, do you remember the name of the group that we recommended to you? You're muted. You're muted.
I don't. I was looking at the file, the bid quotes earlier, but I put it back in Sue's desk.
Because they were very good, and I can get that name for you, Nicole. And we recommended them to neighbors who also had a good experience with them. So they were great.
Yeah, we had a very good experience.
Great, thank you so much.
And I would say it does require more advanced planning, but my experience has been that it really is better to, you know, get good recommendations, find the right contractors, and just get on the schedule and wait. And eventually they'll get to you. As opposed to, you know, there are times we've all needed to go with this one or that one, and usually then it has to be redone again later. So
I had gotten many of my friends to give me names for HVAC because mine had been over 10 years old, and I was told I didn't have to do anything to it. Then I thought one day maybe it's just going to fall apart and I'll be sorry. So I called 10 different contractors, 10 different HVAC people, and no one was taking new customers. So you have to be really, really lucky. Then I was watching TV. Don't laugh. And it said, better call ALO. And when I called them, they came the next day. So I was very happy with their service. And they looked at everything and nothing was wrong and everything was fine.
I'll put together a few people and send it to Rebecca as well.
It's really important. People that are taking new customers. That's the most important part.
Be great. Thank you.
I wish we had this 3 months ago, but but anyway, it was done.
Okay, well, great. We are 15 minutes over time. Are there any more burning questions?
Diane asked a question in the chat about the $50. And unfortunately, the utility just sent us an email that it doesn't really matter when you schedule your appointment. If anybody who does an audit after January 1st is $75. So we're scheduled into 2024 already, and we had to contact all of our customers and let them know that it's going to be 70, because we told them $50 and then they changed it. So yeah, and we there's a little discussion in the background between us and the utilities about it, but we lost. So
okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you, Corey, and thank you, Michelle. And I know Robin already had to leave, but we'll thank her in her absence. And thanks everybody for coming with your great questions. And and Rachel, thank you for making the recording available and put it up on Facebook, and hopefully, or wherever you put the links for Zooms, and hopefully more people can see it as well. So thank you again, everybody.
We'll put it up on the BEKI website as soon as we can.
Great.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Thank you to everyone. This is really helpful.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Rebecca, thank you for putting this together.
Oh, I'm so happy it
And
went.
Michelle, thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Yeah, any questions that anyone has, you can, you know, email is probably the best. Shoot me an email, because if you try to call me, I'm in and out, and you know, so, and I feel bad because I don't get back to people as fast as I can, but email is always there. So.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.